performance review, and it's really an opportunity to talk about why the performance review is not working. And I interviewed 1,200 HR executives in this part of the world, across Australia, New Zealand and parts of Asia, and I essentially asked them what their concerns were about the performance review. And I got 8 concepts or themes that came back, and many of them of course you'd be familiar with. Issues such as it takes a lot of time, it doesn't make a lot of difference, it's quite stressful, it's a bureaucratic exercise in pushing paper and all the rest of it. So I heard information that didn't surprise me, but it did confirm to me that the performance review is really not working. Now, a lot of organisations now are starting to come to that realisation. And I thought, well, if we're going to get rid of the performance review, we've got to replace it with something. And so this book is very much around what I consider to be the replacement. I have checked and I found that there's no research anywhere that I've come across which demonstrates conclusively that the performance reviews actually increase performance. So the question then is, why are we doing it? You know, what is the point of doing this if it's not working? So I came up with a concept called the 5 Conversations Framework. And the 5 Conversations Framework, by its name, implies that there are 5 conversations that managers have with their direct reports, one each month for 5 months. So these are 15-minute performance and developmental conversations over a course of 5 months, which isn't terribly onerous. And then once that's done, the cycle continues and you go back and repeat the process. So essentially what it means is that managers are expected to have 10-15-minute conversations every year with their particular employees or direct reports, which I don't think is a difficult ask, and good managers are doing that anyway. So what are these 5 conversations? Well, the first one is a climate review. Now, the climate review conversation has absolutely nothing to do with the weather, as I'm sure you acknowledge, but it's got a lot to do with job satisfaction, morale and communication. And I find it staggering that organisations all over the world are spending thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars on engagement surveys online. And when these engagement surveys are done, of course, they just get put on the shelf to gather dust. Nothing really happens out of them. And of course, people next time round don't fill them out and the participation rate drops off. So my question is, why don't we just have a conversation about it? Why do we have to do that online? Why can't we talk to people about their job satisfaction, morale and communication? What's to stop us doing that? Absolutely nothing. Now you might say, well, are people more likely to be open and honest in a one-on-one conversation than they are online? Not necessarily, but who's to suggest that they're going to be open and honest when they're online anyway? And I guess if they're not open and honest with their manager about their job satisfaction, morale, and their, you know, and communication generally, well, that probably suggests they should be having more conversations and boosting their trust levels anyway. So that's the first conversation, very easy conversation to get into, and then we move into the strengths and talents conversation. Now, instead of going straight for the jugular and going for what people aren't good at, how about we actually talk about what people are actually good at or what their innate talents are? And this is based on the positive psychology movement that's been around for 25 years that suggests that we should be concentrating on what people's innate talents are. So there's a high correlation, we know, between what people enjoy at work and what they're good at. So we don't go straight asking people, what are your strengths? Because people, of course, get a little bit nervous about that, but we ask people what they enjoy about their work. And out of that evolves a conversation about people's strengths and innate talents and how better to utilise that in their current and future opportunities or work opportunities. So these 2 conversations, that's conversation 1 and 2, create an upward spiral of positivity. And then, of course, we move into the opportunities for growth conversation, which is probably more in line with the traditional performance review, where we talk to people about areas that they've got to work on, and everybody's got areas they've got to work on. And then conversation 4, which is a learning and development conversation, actually captures the learning opportunities that come out of conversation 2 and 3, inevitably there will be some learning that comes out of that. It may not be sending people off to courses. It may well be just simply around, coaching someone or showing someone how to do something or buddying them up with somebody else. Those sorts of things are easy to do, and they should be captured in conversation 4, which is the learning and development conversation. And then we get to conversation 5, which is the innovation and continuous improvement conversation. So conversation 4 is learning and development about the individual, whereas conversation 5 is around ways and means of making their immediate workplace more efficient and effective. And that's kind of exciting, isn't it, to think that in an organisation of 1,000 people, in the month of, say, September, there'd be 1,000 conversations on ways and means of creating a more efficient and effective workplace. That's a good thing, and it's an exciting thing. And not all of those ideas, obviously, will be brilliant, but I can guarantee to you that there'll be a handful of ideas that are gems, that are well worth taking on board and are easy to implement, and that's the key point there. So in a nutshell, that's what the 5 conversations is all about. Now, since the book has been written, it's been going like wildfire. There are organisations all over the world, public sector, private sector, and not-for-profit, who are taking on the 5 conversations framework, and they're getting brilliant results. And some of them have been bold enough to actually get rid of their performance review and replace it with the 5 conversations framework. So it's well worth delving into. So I strongly recommend that you have a look at my book. Put it up the right way, that might help. Have a look at my book and consider delving into this, and consider actually applying the 5 conversations framework to your workplace for better results. Thank you for listening.